moving on to our next subject, which is coming to America too.
Oh
So,
man. Oh man.
before we dive in here, just because we are going to be talking about many different aspects of this film and what it has meant to Black culture and etc. I want to just throw this disclaimer out here. This topic, like many others, will reference our individual views and is not reflective of the group as a whole. With that said, in general, we are not here to attack anyone's lifestyle, and each point of view, as previously stated, is individual to our beliefs on the subject. Okay, just so the audience knows. So, the official question for this topic, and I have a feeling that multiple things will come up, but it is what are your overall thoughts on the film? So I'm gonna go ahead and throw this one to E-Man. What say you, sir?
But yeah, but I would say last Friday or Thursday, I actually watched the movie. hmm So for me, when I love a movie, I'm always nitpicking movies. And the first thing was that really shocked me was they didn't have the original theme song in the beginning. You know, that made me feel like I was getting ready to watch Coming to America. You know, because you know my and this is just personal, but my grandmother loved that movie so much that we watched it every time that I always went to her house. It was that special to me. So when I saw when the second one came out, and I was listening, I was waiting for that theme song, but they only played like 3 minutes of it. I felt to me that was a little disrespectful. Because that's what I was waiting for. And then another thing is, that man in the first one, I don't even know his character name, but the driver, you know, the one who always sings and always, he kills, in the beginning, Coming to America, that song,
Queen, the one that sings Queen to Be?
yeah, Queen to Be,
Yeah, I don't know his name, but I know which character
yeah.
you're referring to.
So they
He's
gave
kind
my
of like
man
Prince's
another good,
concierge.
good,
Yeah.
7 minutes, killing on the mic. And that made me extremely excited, But I hate how they try to downplay him, then try and give him no lines and make him feel part of the movie. See, that was a little disrespectful and whatnot, you know. But overall, you know, the movie was okay. I felt it was a safe movie, and I think it's because the simple fact is everyone's so scared to say what they want to say now, you know, and that's been the whole thing. But the controversy behind the movie is, the character who played as, the prince and whatnot was actually on, I'll make sure I want to pronounce this right, RuPaul Drag Race and whatnot, And many people who don't know that show, RuPaul is basically a transgender man. It's a man who basically portray himself as a woman. And he seemed like the guy who played that character, was actually on that show. You know, I actually did some research and I found out, and yes, he was on that show. And the one thing that really, really, disturbs me a lot is that it's this whole demasculation of like black males so they can play a role part in a movie. And I'm saying this because several has talked about it. And Little Richard, before he died, he actually had an interview. And the first thing they always asked him, like, why he dressed the way he acts. And the answer that he asked, like when he answered the question, you know, you know, he said, "This is how they want me to be. This is the only way I can be on stage." You know, I have to dress a certain way. My mannerisms have to be a certain way, just for me to be on stage. And I'm not quoting him. I'm just taking about. I'm just giving you guys a synopsis of what he says. You know, and I feel like this was just the same situation because you know He was a lead in a very predominant movie that everyone was waiting for, that sequel. And now we got it, and now, we have to deal with this whole backlash with this thing, with this character. And I feel really bad for this brother because it's so, it's like distasteful, because when I found out about that, I was like, so are you telling me, or like, are you also, a transgender, man, which doesn't bother me, but it's just something you're going to hide and not tell people. And then when people find out, like what does that take, and I just keep finding this whole thing of being, disrespectful, because it's this whole agenda thing they keep pushing, and that's what's making me now disliking the taste of the movie. Will I watch, supposedly the third one that comes out? Maybe, because this is something, I need to know what's going on. But the second one, it's just me finding about that. They downplayed a few characters. They made the king look really bad, with whole you know him over there sleeping with a prostitute. Like this. It's just this whole sickening thing. So I'm just, it was good, but I'm also disappointed at the end. So it's just not a bad movie, but overall, but just like for like a personal standpoint, it was just it was a just an utter taste in my mouth, and I just it's just sad. It's just sad.
Mhm.
I'm gonna just leave it as that. Just sad.
Okay. Okay. Gotcha. So I'm gonna go ahead and go here with my views on this. Only because I have a few things that I want to cover about it, as well as specifically to a few points that you made, Emmett. So I think for me, as far as the casting was a big thing for me. Not so much about the son. I honestly did not have any knowledge of his prior roles, or what he's done previously. But honestly, it doesn't bother me. I don't necessarily hold previous work to an actor's ability to do the role they're in at that moment. Because if that's the case, then I would be very concerned about Robert Pattinson being the next Batman, because Twilight was horrible, right? But it's my understanding that Robert Pattinson actually has a large set of acting chops, and he's done some other movies. I can't say I've seen very many of them, where he did a great job. But I said all that to say I don't particularly have a problem with the Prince's previous work. I don't care whether it was with RuPaul's Drag Race or with anything else. I personally do not watch the show, but it's not because I'm in any way offended by it. It's just I don't watch the show like I don't watch many other shows. And I think from the perspective of, did he do a good job in that role as the Prince? My answer is no. But it's because I don't believe anyone did a good job in their roles in this film. To be honest, I felt like Eddie Murphy's and Arsenio Hall's accents were abhorrent. They were horrible.
I
They
agree.
they
Yeah,
they they,
that's
they
true.
put no effort whatsoever into sounding remotely close to having African. I'm throwing up my quotation marks because Africa is a continent made of many countries, but to having an accent that even comes close to being of one of those cultures. And for me, it's like, bruh, that's the entire premise of your film. How could you lack the audacity to not put forward the appropriate energy and attention to that aspect of it? Honestly, was very frustrating to me. And I know that the son wasn't supposed to be of African descent. He was of American descent, but he just wasn't believable for me from his acting, his scenes. Okay, the scenes he were in with the young lady who turned out to be his barber, she was very believable in my opinion. She was doing a great job. But it felt like his responses were studied, scripted responses, lacking the appropriate emotion. And then as far as just the actors in the film in general, it felt like Eddie Murphy once again went out of his way to display brown-skinned women in a stereotypical ratchet way. And I'll give you specific examples. In the first Coming to America, a lot of people don't know this, but she recently did an interview and clarified this. Vanessa Bell Calloway auditioned for the role of Lisa. And she was told that she wasn't a fit for the role. But she wasn't a fit for the role, but she was so good that they wanted to fit her in the film somewhere. So they put her in the role where she's a woman who can't think for herself, who is instructed to bark like a dog, hop on one leg, and they even had the audacity to continue that into the second movie as a joke. And if you
that was not cool.
No, it wasn't. And if you look at Eddie Murphy's his continued behavior with this, he does this often, like Norbit. The entire premise of that horrible movie, which is not 1 inch of funny, and this is not about being a brown-skinned woman myself to a certain extent. I mean, it is, but it isn't. It's not, because I can laugh, you know what I'm saying, when things are funny, regardless of whether it's something I relate to or not. That movie Norbit just wasn't funny. It was outrageous and ridiculous. But again, he went out of his way to make the main character a ratchet brown-skinned woman. He did the exact same thing in Coming to America 2 with the mother of his son. And at some point, it just gets tiring. It's like, bruh, if that's the extent of your comic abilities, you need to retire. I don't care what you've accomplished in the past. You have to evolve at some point. And so that, coupled with the bad acting, coupled with the fact that for me, it just felt like this was a grab at pandering to the things that Black people wanted to see in the film, like bringing back all the old characters and the live funeral for King Joffrey, which was just ridiculous, where they had basically every Black
goodness. I don't even want to talk about that scene.
Yeah, I mean,
salt and pepper?
Yeah, it was just ridiculous. It was just ridiculous. So for me, my overall thoughts of the film, basura. Which is Spanish for trash.
I like that.
I like that. But what I was about to say, what did you guys think about that whole Michael Blackson stuff with the whole Wesley Snipes stuff they had going on over there?
It was extra. It was extra.
I felt that's the same thing I was about to say. It was extremely extra, and that's what I started saying. You know, that's why I said towards the film, it was okay because they gave us a little bit what we wanted to see, but like overall, man, shit.
Yeah, I mean, if you even look at that, you have Michael Blackson, who is actually of African descent. Who we know has great acting chops, who could have actually played the role as the general. Introduced Wesley Snipes, who is not as comical as Michael Blackson. Why?
I don't know why Wesley Snipes was even in this damn movie.
Exactly.
Right.
It's the same reason why his ass shouldn't have been in the Expendable 3 movie. And he didn't do not one damn thing in that damn movie. And I think he only had like 3 or 4 scenes. But I'm like sitting here like, why is Wesley Snipes even in this movie and any other movie? Not to downplay the man as an actor, but like Wesley doesn't feel like he even wants to act anymore. So I'm like, why are you in movies, man? Like,
And you overlooked a guy, Michael Blackson, who is actually of African descent, who could have played the shit out of that role. To have him just be the announcer, And then,
Just
Tiana Taylor and the son, the one that's from Power or whatever, they were nothing but pretty faces in the film, right? There, a lot of women are attracted to him, and I know he is of African descent, but it's still, a lot of women are attracted to him, and a lot of men are attracted to Tiana Taylor. That was the extent of those characters. It was just trash. It was just trash.
I feel like
Trash.
Pat would say,
before
sir.
oh, okay. I just want to just say something quick.
Oh.
But
Mhm.
what I noticed, if you would really look at the movie, you know how they were certain and they were cutting back, like, you know, from the first one and showing certain scenes from the first one and whatnot. It made it seemed like they were trying to do this whole thing of this past and future thing, like past, present, and future, you know. And I think that was the failing part about it, you know, because I like Nia Angel's like response about, you know, Michael Blackson should have been like the general, but the first movie was made 1988. You know, I was one when that movie first came out. I didn't watch that movie until I was like until I was 4, and and you know, it would have worked well because nobody would have known. Only those who grew up, who was born in the 80s and grew up in the 90s, would have known that. So it would have worked well, but it seemed like Nine just says, like, you know, they just wanted to put it out there. So, but continue, PAT. I'm gonna let you say your piece.
All right. Well, y'all definitely gave your takes on it, and I I agree overall. What I will say is, as far as Coming to America 2, it it was okay. I mean, it was cool. It was okay for what it was. Um, I would say people just nobody should expect it to even come close to what the first one is. It it
Mhm.
definitely should not be expected to be a classic or even somewhere in that realm. I always tell people that you got to go in with low expectations. Like, you just go, with this type of movie, don't you know, have big expectations of it. Just going with a low expectation, know that it's not going to be anywhere close to the first one. So I didn't go in with any big expectations at all. And really, in the beginning, I didn't really want to see it, surprisingly, because I love the first one. But when I heard that Coming to America 2 is coming out, I didn't even really make much of a big deal out of it. I was just like, oh, okay, here we go with the remakes and trying to create sequels. And mind you, this sequel is about decades old now. If they were going to do a sequel, they should have did it maybe 2 years or so after the first one.
I agree.
But that's neither here or there. So when it was announced that it was coming out, and even looking at the commercials, I was just like, whatever. But then I finally decided to watch it, just to say that I've seen it. And yeah, it was okay. I mean, I'm not gonna trash it too hard, even though I could, but it was okay. A few things we do have to remember is that first movies in general are just hard to top, especially if those first movies are classics. They're just hard to top. Sequels are always tough. And when the first one, around the time of the first one, Eddie Murphy was huge back then. He came to fame, as we know, in the 80s, and he was big in the late 80s into the 90s. The first Coming to America came out in 1988, and it came out after he had big comedy specials like Delirious and Raw.
Right.
So coming.
Sorry to cut you off, PAT. Didn't Beverly Hills Cops, did the first and second one, didn't it come out before or after Coming to America? So I think it was before.
Before, I thought it was after, but I mean, either way, they came out around the same time. But what I was saying is the first movie capitalized off of his fame, and it was a classic overall. The movie itself was a classic, and it stood the test of time. It stood the test of time because we're still talking about how great it is to this day. So I would say to anybody that Coming to America 2, you would have to detach from the nostalgia of the first one. You're just gonna have to detach from that. You're gonna have to detach from the nostalgia in order to not be too disappointed in it. You just have to do that. Also, we have to remember that the first Coming to America was rated R. So with it being rated R, it had the luxury of being able to be edgy. Part 2 was PG-13.
Oh, damn, I didn't even know that.
Yeah, it was PG-13. So it had to tread lightly. And as I think it was E-Man that said it was safe. Unfortunately, it was safe. You could tell. You could look at the first one, you could look at the second one. Number 2 is they played the safe route. It was watered down. And that's what makes it, I'm gonna say trash. I'm gonna just say, just as a movie itself, it being trash, I think it being watered down added to that. It just
to clarify there for you all, Beverly Hills Cop 1 and 2 did come out before Coming to America.
Before.
That's what I thought. Okay. So I was right, because I just checked it out myself. I was actually right.
Okay.
Yeah, they came out before.
Because and the reason why I'm saying this, because Beverly Hills Cops 1 and 2 was the buildup to Coming to America. You know,
right.
I don't know, who was director for Beverly Hills Cops 1 and 2, but because of, Delirious and Raw, when Eddie Murphy was out, that's the reason why he got the star role in Beverly Hills Cops 1 and 2.
Well, actually, Delirious and Raw came out after Beverly Hills Cop.
So it came after
1 and 2. Raw came out in the same year as Beverly Hills Cop 2, right before Coming to America. So I think Pat mentioned earlier. So I think both of your points are on point, because Pat mentioned earlier, before Coming to America, he was fresh off of, Raw and etc. and having that fame. And then you're actually right as well, because Beverly Hills Cop 1 and 2 even came before Raw. So I think both of your points are on point there.
Right.
So did Delirious it came after Coming to America?
Delirious came, let me see where Delirious is. Delirious is actually not on this list. I only see Raw. Let me see when Delirious came out.
Because if we find out when Delirious came out, then this will.
I feel like that was his early stuff.
Delirious came out in '83.
Yeah,
it came out in '83.
Yeah, that was his first. Ooh. That was one of his first comedy specials, really.
So if that's the case, so Delirious build him up for Beverly Hills Cop, Beverly Hills Cop, the first one. Then within that same year, he does a second one and does Raw after that. Then comes Coming to America. Do you see how the buildup comes with, Eddie Murphy? Because I believe at the time, when Eddie was out, the whole big controversy with him was, when Harlem Nights came out, and then I think when Boomerang came out, that was, the whole thing that kind of blew up Eddie Murphy. And I think because of what's that movie he just did for that dude in the 90s that everyone likes? I even forgot the name, that everyone said that movie was like horrible on Netflix. But
just so you fellas know, he started out on Saturday Night Live in 1980, right?
Right.
That was really where he got his first, because he started out as a cast member, and he stood out amongst Chevy Chase and stuff. You know what I mean? And Chevy Chase was a big name in Saturday Night Live.
Yeah,
a lot of people credit Chevy Chase to making Saturday Night Live what it was. And here comes this, young Black kid who's out here outshining Chevy Chase on Saturday Night Live, on his form, one could argue, right? So I think, that kind of projected him into being able to do some of the other stuff, like 48 Hours and Trading Places. because I would say that's one of the oldest movies that I remember Eddie Murphy doing, where he just absolutely killed the entire thing. He was definitely the star of the show, was both 48 Hours and Trading Places. And both of them were his first film was 48 Hours, besides what was I just saying? Saturday Night Live. And I know that which one, I always confuse Nick Nolte and Gary Busey, but I think it was Nick Nolte.
Yeah. Okay, so I'm not the only one who does that, because I always get them too confused.
Those two look alike to me, but
they do.
You know, even again in that movie in 48 Hours, Eddie Murphy stood out against Nick Nolte, who in the 80s was a big actor for, you know, a lot of the films, especially comedy. So I think, you know, all of your points are kind of rolled into each other, with the overall arcing point being he was much more raw in you know, pun intended there.
Yeah.
He was much more raw before he did, you know, certain movies, even before the first Coming to America, which, like PAT said, was rated R, compared to where he is now. If you look at everything after certain movies, like really, I would say the last movie where he was just like really in your face raw with the shit, like was almost like pro-black, which is where I really loved him and is one of my favorite movies, is Boomerang. If you notice in Boomerang,
classic.
Boomerang is actually my favorite romantic comedy of all time. And if you notice, most of that cast is black.
Yeah,
More
black.
In the Office, even in his Office, his, you know, the one time you see a few white people is when the French board of directors come. Other than that, it's black people in that movie. And you got Strange, who is Grace Jones, who does not give a fuck. And she did not give a fuck in that film. But to you all's point, I think somewhere along the lines, his celebrity changed from being, you know, Eddie Murphy, this raw young black man in your face, I'm giving you black culture, this is our humor, this is where we are, etc., to Beverly Hills Cop 3, Vampire in Brooklyn, Nutty Professor, watered down Eddie Murphy. And that's what this second Coming to America is representative of.
Yeah, that's very true. And just to kind of I guess tie it up a little bit. And what I was saying is, and when it comes to Coming to America too, I mean, overall it was pretty one-dimensional, and it just leaned too much into an all-star cast, which I don't have a huge issue with. It's fine if they can make it work. And I think one of the good things I'll say real quick is that they had the like old comedians or the comedians who are veterans, and then they had like new comedians. So I mean that part's cool, but it also, the movie itself also, which you touched on, Naya, is that the stereotypes. I just think it leaned too heavy into these regurgitated black stereotypes. You know, like black people in America being loud, ghetto, and obnoxious. Africans being kings and queens or warlords and child rebel soldiers. Hip hop being in the mix, the black church, etc. It's just these regurgitated black stereotypes being used over and over and over. So that definitely, I feel, hurt the movie and added to the one-dimensionalness of it. Now, in terms of Jermaine Fowler, that's the dude who played his son, Eddie Murphy's son in the movie.
Okay.
Just to touch on that, I do agree with what E-Man said about the emasculation of the black man. That is definitely a real thing. And I actually saw the picture of him dressed in drag on RuPaul's Drag Race. I saw that on Instagram. Somebody posted about it, and I was just like, oh, okay. You know, when I saw it, I was just like, oh, okay. But honestly, when we look at Hollywood and the emasculation of the black man agenda, it really isn't surprising when you really take a step back to think about it. because as we all know, quite a few prominent Black actors put on a dress. Quite a few, and we know who some of these actors are. I mean, anybody could type in Google Black actors who put on a dress in their movies. So the emasculation of the Black man is a real thing, and Hollywood is one of the major tools to push that agenda forward. So for somebody like Jermaine Fowler, who I guess is on the come up, and like I said, I've never heard of him prior to coming to America 2. I never even heard of him. That movie was the first time I've even seen him. So with him, it's basically, okay, you're up next. You know, it's one of those things where if you want to elevate within Hollywood and get more roles, you got to put on a dress.
Okay, I was wondering how y'all were connecting that, because in the movie he doesn't put on a dress.
No.
In any way. He's not, and so for me, I guess I'm missing the connection of him being in RuPaul's Drag Race to his ability to effectively execute the role as the son of a king. I think he failed to do that not because he was ever in RuPaul's Drag Race, but because the script itself was horrible. And I don't think that not only was the script itself horrible, but I don't think that he has the acting chops to pull off that role just yet, because he doesn't have an extensive career yet. But I don't know that him being in RuPaul Drag Race has anything to do with his ability to not appropriately reflect the role. I think gay, straight, or in between, you know, an actor's ability to act is their ability to act.
Right. And I'm sorry, not to cut you off. But
no, you're fine.
No, what you're saying is true. Like him being in not Drew Paul, but RuPaul's Drag Race. RuPaul's Drag Race. That it's not about his acting ability or lack thereof per se. I think what E-Man and myself are trying to say is that was used to basically elevate him in order to get into this movie Coming to America 2 and be able to work with the likes of Eddie Murphy.
Okay.
Correct.
Right. So it's not about his acting ability or lack thereof. It was just, I guess that we're using that example as basically, it was like a stepping stone. It was and just like all the other prominent Black actors out there, it's like a stepping stone, and it's a form of buck breaking. It's just one of those.
Agree. Yeah, I was going to say ritual, but buck breaking.
Yeah, we could say ritual, but it's a form of buck breaking, because you want to destroy Black masculinity. One of those ways to do that is through Hollywood. You have to show prominent Black actors, and of course, not all Black actors have done this, because of course somebody could respond and say, well, not all Black male actors wore a dress, and which is true. But when you look at some of the more prominent ones, they have worn a dress at some point, and Hollywood is just one of those tools to basically break Black masculinity. You have to show prominent Black male actors in a dress to, you know.
I definitely understand you all's point. I don't know that I agree with it or that it applies here, because my only thing is there are plenty of men who are of the gay community who are perfectly masculine, and you would not have any idea that they were gay unless they gave you that information. And who's to say that it is not their skill set alone that would get them a role if they don't particularly let the casting company know that they are gay? And so for me, it's one of those things where I can to an extent understand why you may feel it was a part of what happened. I don't necessarily agree with premise, because I think for me, what I've come to learn is that a part of what happens way too often, or this is what I come to feel. I'm going to say learn and I come to feel. I happen to feel, and I don't want to go too far down a rabbit hole, but I think it's just important, is that as a race of human beings, we tend to put way too much validity into labels. Everything is about being labeled. Everyone wants to fit in somewhere. It's a basic human emotion. And because of that, people spend entirely too much time labeling everything. And I've really done my best myself to come away from that. And I mean that on both sides. I think there are instances where labels are overly used. You can't call me this. I'm this and this and this and this and this. And I think there are other sides where labels are underused because you're basically just trying to be a jerk or an asshole to a certain extent because you disagree with someone's beliefs. But I said all that to say, I believe that a person's credence to execute a role should be solely dependent on their credence to execute a role. Whoever is the best person that walks into that role and auditions is who should get the part, regardless of anything else, unless they are a murderer or a rapist or just something, that obviously should prevent them from being able to participate in the role. The overall best actor is due to receive that role. And perhaps what happened in this case is everyone that came in and auditioned for the role was some ass. And so they gave it to who they felt the best person was. Now, I happen to think, as I said, that the script was just so ridiculous that I don't know that anyone could have particularly done a great role in it. But I also think that he was outacted by the lady who was set up to be his barber. Right. But I do understand where you all are coming from. It's just, in my opinion, I'm not sure if that's what happened. But I appreciate that we're all able to discuss this. And again, as we said previously, this is in no way intended to be offensive to anyone's lifestyle, to each their own. We're stating our opinions on how we feel it affected the movie. So we got one subject left, fellas.
I just want to add one more quick note.
Yeah,
I want to add one quick note.
Sure.
So knowing that, we're saying this movie was bad and so on and so forth, but I feel like, it, based upon what you're saying now and toward them, the script being that bad, I'm starting to feel that, if you remember, Eddie Murphy did the Netflix, movie, Dolomite Is My Name. I feel like, we're just putting out movies just to put out movies now, I don't think it even has to deal with the script, because now it's just basically saying, we're willing to accept, all the things that we just talked about that was bad in that movie, and we'll, we're going to watch it anyway, and then we'll have our opinions to share on it. But it just seems, it's just, well, let's put it out, and boom, it's out.
Yeah. Let's make some money. Let's make some quick money.
Just make some quick money and whatnot, it's no longer, and this is what, I've been telling people this, the craftsmanship on a lot of things is now diminished, because we don't value anything anymore. So and it goes the same thing even when we're talking about it's the whole music thing, like people willing to make music so fast to the point like you'll remember that song yesterday, but then next 3 days you're gonna forget about that song. Same thing with movies, like we watch it, then afterwards, poof, it's gone again. So I feel like this is one of those instances that we're now, I think we're all being caught up in this trap now, because we all know sequels, it's hard to top it, but it took almost 3 decades to come out with this damn sequel. Like, if you would know, look how many movies been out since 1988. till now that all had sequels to movies, you know, that took a while to like. And I'm just going to use this one example, So like, Macaulay Culkin was a really good actor. He did Home Alone 1, 2, no, Home Alone 1 and 2, you know. Look how long it took just to get 3 out and he didn't play in it. You see what I'm saying? But they could have done it, at the time that he was fit to fit the role. But they didn't. So it just seems like, the whole nostalgia thing, like, like we're waiting for it. It didn't happen, but they gave it to us though. And I feel like, now they're following up with a third one now, supposedly. And I feel like, hopefully they're gonna end it on a fourth one so they can give us what we want. But yeah, that's all I gotta say left.
Yes, sir. Good stuff.
Yep.